Hello and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I'm Jeff Strane, and I'm the Senior U.S. Director for Government and Education Affairs for SHI. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Pat McLoughlin, the Executive Director of MD Think with the state of Maryland. Good morning.
Morning, Jeff. How are you?
Good, very good. So let's transition. Tell what is MD Think, and then what is your experience as the CDO Director or Chief Officer helped you, hurt you, changed you?
Sure. So MD Think is a enterprise initiative. Essentially, it is a cloud modernization effort, which was taking human services and health and social service benefits and looking at a way that they can be delivered more effectively to Marylanders, to customers. So it was a large initiative to kind of coordinate and consolidate a lot of the disparate applications that are um, typically charged with delivering certain services to Marylanders or to customers, and looking at a way that we can re-architect that using modern data architectures, using kind of standardized transformation characteristics to be more effective in the way that we have cross collaboration between those particular um, applications or services. So when we're talking about these services, we're thinking about things like Medicaid, SNAP, cash or TANF, child support, child welfare and adult services, the health benefit exchange. There's a lot of these different independent or agency directed applications or products. But the reality is the information that that's collecting, or thereby determining whether or not those benefits are to be distributed, are really relying upon a lot of the same information in the background. So instead of us collecting this information over and over and over again, let's look at adjusting the architecture to allow us to either collect that information once or reference existing information that we have. So it was a program that was started, again, out of the Human Services Agency in 2016, 2017, and then it's expanded to grow to a larger portfolio of agencies that we have now. And about a year and a half ago, then just there was a change in leadership, and I was asked at that time if I would come and help kind of work through the additional kind of changes that were being made to the leadership and to the program. Loved working there. It's an incredibly data driven environment. So you asked the question of how does my background as CDO and in the data space work here? I mean, data is at the core of everything we do within MD Think. The entire premise is that we need to be more effective of taking information A from a particular customer for a particular program, and then be able to reference other information that that individual may have supplied at another time or for another program without asking them to do it repeatedly, right? The entire foundation of the program is based on having a really solid data architecture. So that allowed me to kind of transition closely. And then I was fortunate enough to serve in both the roles of executive director and CDO for a little over a year. And then fortunately have been able to have a new chief data officer come onto the state, which we're thrilled to have. So.
Yeah, that's great. So, how talk about ensuring that the digital services and the modernization work in a seamless? Because I know you probably moved from mainly from mainframe into applications, clouds, a lot of handshakes that you had to coordinate, both on probably state data and Fed data. So that's an interesting model to seamlessly transition from to.
Yes. Yeah, and really being thoughtful in the way that we want to architect how that information comes together. We also know that when you're bringing multiple systems together, to your point, some coming from mainframe, some coming from other applications, some may already be cloud hosted, state data, federal data, and so on. We need to think about how that's all going to come together. So there's the approach of looking at the broad data models. How do we start to leverage this data more effectively where we know we've got, a certain subset of data that would be valuable in another program? How do we bring that together in a way that doesn't require us to duplicate it? But from a data quality standpoint, how do we also ensure that the data that we are starting to connect is accurate, and we
Mhm.
continue to make sure that the data is maintained at the highest level of quality possible? A lot of that is also driven upon our master data management environment, how this data comes all together to publish that golden record. But it is something that we have to be very careful and continue to iterate through that process of making sure that those systems can speak together really effectively.
So speak, in the forward windshield view, what do you see changing in or your roadmap in the next few years that you'd like to accomplish?
So I think we want to continue to improve and evolve the way that we're leveraging data across the various applications that are on the MD Think platform. There are close to 100 of them, so there's a lot of handshakes and talking between those. We want to ensure that as we're looking at new technologies, new approaches, new designs, that we test those out really effectively. Because really, what we want to do is reduce the burden on our customers and what data they have to supply. We want to ensure we have the highest quality information available to them. So, constantly looking at ways that we can reinforce the quality of that data, look for different ways of quality checks. And then we also want to make sure that the overall experience that they have, the customers have with us, and the customers are not just the public. It's also caseworkers, it's management, it's executive leaders that need to run reports. How do we ensure that they get the highest quality data in a timely way, but do so in a simplified process? So we're constantly looking in that direction. I think we're also thinking about as we look at new or perhaps additional applications that may come on the platform or we may need to integrate with that may not be on the platform, doing so in a way that we can kind of have repeatable processes so that we aren't introducing opportunities for kind of disrupting that data model as we go. We've got a really major or strong initiative across the state right now from the digital services landscape, looking at ways that we can improve the way that we engage with our customers through technology. Data is foundational to so much of that. So we're going to continue to see, data really leading the way in alignment with that customer experience, simplified technologies being used, mobile friendliness, the things you hear all the time in the space. But data is going to have, a front seat to that entire process.
So, last question. Talk about how you manage culture and organizational shift in this kind of environment. And some of that probably is both internal, but then some of that is the messaging that you provide to citizens.
Right. Yeah, and I think a lot of that is really driven on trust and ensuring that when we're talking about ways that we want to lift up the ability to leverage data more effectively, to be more not reliant upon, but to interact with the applications more
Mhm.
seamlessly. We also have to make sure that the information we're providing, I keep talking about quality, is at the highest quality possible, but also delivers the answers that they need. And I think one of the things that we often do is complicate the process in cultural shifts. We try to
Mhm.
force feed certain information because we're so driven to kind of make that change. Well, change is hard and it evolves over time. And I think what we need to do is find ways as we're continuing to change those cultures to marry the difference between the quality wins we need to ensure we're providing with ways that it actually aligns with what their overall mission is. Whether it's a caseworker or whether it's someone at the executive leadership level. Being able to kind of repeat those processes that show how data was helpful in helping to drive those decisions. And then also looking at ways that we can continue to fine tune or simplify the way that they're going to interact with things. Because as that process gets easier and they rely upon it more, there's
Mhm.
more of a need and a willingness to buy into those processes.
I
Um,
completely.
so that's really the way that we want to do things. Is it gets back to that the crawl, kind of walk, run approach to things. But if you can start to ingrain it to your business processes on a regular basis without feeling as though it's an overwhelming lift to do so, I think the sustainability of keeping it part of that business process is much greater.
Very insightful. And I want to thank you for joining me today. And as a close, I'd like to ask everyone to please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. Thank you again.
All right, thank you, Jeff.